And so why wouldn't they think that they were going to do well in college? But we know that the reality is a little bit different for them when they get there. Again, as Kyle said, based on the GPA. You know, if you have a 2.8 as the average across our 7 colleges, again, I'm not the math person, but 50% are below that, and 50% are above that to make that average. So when you have almost 3/4 of our incoming class saying, oh, we're going to do a 3.5 or better, you can imagine that we see some very sad individuals coming into our offices, which is why all of us who teach study skills have tissue in the office too. So we do have some tears here and again. But the power of old habits really is what Kyle was talking about just now. So how students approach their study has everything to do with how they were successful in high school. And the other thing is how we organize our support services has to take into account all of these things that we know about the students and their habits and expectations that form their approaches to learning. Okay? So what we're going to look at is we're going to move on now to the college schedule. And the thing that I find amazing every year, and this is going to be a really nice visual illustration of how students form their schedule when they get to college. And does anybody notice anything about this? It looks exactly like their high school schedule for the most part, right? The only thing that we're missing here, and this is intentional, is there is no wake up, mom's waking you up, dad's waking you up, although I'm sure we're all familiar with helicopter parents these days, and we do have quite a few individuals whose parents are still calling to wake them up. We get a few phone calls, and I did get a couple last semester from a mom wanting to know if she could hire somebody who would be able to get her son up every morning, make sure he was wearing a collared shirt on the days he needed to wear a collared shirt, so on and so forth. And I thought, I'm going to quit. Is this what the world has come to? But anyway, as Kyle mentioned earlier, we're a little bit unique in that we have a 2-year residency requirement. So all freshmen and sophomores have to live on campus. The only way you can get out of living on campus is if you live within whatever mile radius it is to be a commuter student, or there's an age requirement too. If you're 25, something like that, or so many years out of high school you don't have to live. Another phenomenon we're seeing is that parents seem to be buying houses in the neighborhood so they can stick their kids into the houses so they don't have to live into the dorms. It's 2013. But for the most part, our students are living in the dorms. 92% of our freshmen are living in the dorms. And so what the student sees in this, again, like you had said, what the student sees is, well, of course, I'm going to do just what I did in high school. And what they do is they come to a thing called preview over the summer. And that's where they're allowed to pick their schedules, okay? And so naturally, they go through, well, we don't have a book anymore, but they get online and they decide, okay, well, I'm going to take this. And, well, I'm going to go ahead. This would be somebody who may be pre-med, maybe they're undecided, I'm not sure. But they figure, you know what, I'm used to getting up early, so why wouldn't I start my day? Some of them are used to getting up and starting their day, they're at swim practice in the morning before school, so on and so forth. But they're going to start their day bright and early at 8 o'clock. And then, well, I might as well throw psychology in there, English, that fits in perfectly, Spanish. I got to tell you what happens right here for the students, this 12 o'clock hour, they pain over whether or not they should take a lunch. Okay, like, do I take a lunch at this point? And they go, well, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and throw in history. I'll take my lunch at 1 o'clock, and then I'm going to be done somewhere around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Now, this schedule makes me a little bit nervous for an incoming freshman. Does anybody have any idea why that might make me nervous, or make you nervous, or be a red flag? Yes?
Well, I do academic advising too, so I almost never, unless they identify themselves as a morning person, don't put them in 8 o'clock classes. Give them some kind of mid-morning break, so that way then they have time to go see their advisor, do tutoring, maybe join a club, because they're encouraged to join clubs because that improves retention. It's way too packed. And I don't think they have any concept of really how much time outside of class they really have to devote to these classes.
Right.
Yeah.
I just noticed that, if that were our institution, that would be like taking 24 credits.
Yeah, this would be typically, I think this is a 19, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's 15, and
15.
then they'll get their site discussion will be worth, and their lab will be worth another couple of credits or whatever. But yeah, so you're looking at a lot of classes, back to back, like you said. Anybody notice anything right here?
Yeah,
Notice?
classes on Fridays. I do know students usually, most of our students will try not to set the classes.
Right.
You know, I have to tell you, honestly, that we took in the last few years, we've taken in the largest freshman classes that we've ever had, which may not compare with yours. For us, they were large numbers. We took in, I think it was 1950 one year, 2000 this past year. And there's only so much space on campus and buildings. So what they had to do is they had to open up a lot more 8 o'clock hours for classes, and they had to open up a lot more Fridays. So unbeknownst to some of us who didn't know that, yeah, so they are going to class on Friday. Yes?
I think the other thing is they think, oh look, I'm going to study down here in the afternoon, but then they have a whole block. So, oh wait, let's go play, or let's do this. And I mean, because they have big blocks sometimes, so they can
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point.
take activities.
Right. Well, and somebody mentioned, you were mentioning too, it is really important for them to get involved in activities. I mean, that's part of the college experience. We have something called Orientation Fest, and it happens during the first couple of days of the first week of classes. And so what we see happening is, we have over 220 student organizations, and so what we see happening, freshmen in particular, is they go ahead back to their dorm, they grab their wheelbarrows, and they bring their wheelbarrows through orientation, and they just fill it with all kinds of things that they've always wanted to do in their whole life, that they've never been able to do, but now look, mom and dad are paying a lot of money for me to come here, and look at all the student organizations I can join. And you're right, what they see is, look at all of this free time I have. I've got tons of free time. So they fill this time with all kinds of activities, Facebook texting, Twittering, all that other business. Throw in laundry there once every 3 or 4 months. But for the most part, they're filling up all their time because remember, back in high school, they started really early in the morning and they pretty much went until bedtime. They got up and they started and did it all over again. And you're right, studying maybe. Studying maybe. Remember, in high school, homework was the thing that you did. In college, there's not a whole lot of homework, at least at Marquette, that gets graded. Now, if you're in a math class and you have quizzes, but still, those are exams, those are quizzes, those are markers. There really isn't any do this homework, turn it in, you're going to get credit for it. What we have is in chemistry and in math, I see in a lot of our math classes, is what is called recommended homework. Well, interestingly enough, if the students do the homework that is recommended, what they would find is it looks very similar to what it is that they see on a test. I always find it amazing, though, that they say that what they saw on the test had nothing to do. That teacher just pulled it out of nowhere. I find that interesting. Anyway, so moving on. The other thing that we observe is my supervisor and I go into the dorms and we do some study skills workshops with students. And it's an amazing thing to see them gathering with all of their books. They pile all their books together, they grab them, they go into the common areas, they set them down, they sit on them, they lean on them, they might actually appear to be reading and highlighting something, but it's done. And they're all doing what? Talking about how much study they have. But they're not actually doing the study, right? They're in a dorm with 600 other people doing what they call study. We like to call it group procrastination. But again, and what they're doing is, hey, how are you doing today? You doing very well?
She's so busy.
I know, I'm so busy too, and how are you doing? Oh, yeah,
oh man, my mom's like holding back my money, I gotta get a job now.
Right, I mean, and they go on and on talking about all these things, and what they're doing for each other is they're reinforcing that what it is that they're sitting there doing is okay. You're okay? I'm okay. You're okay? We must all be okay. Because look, we're going to do an exercise in a little bit that talks about how this can become problematic for them with this I'm okay, you're okay. Once again, they're getting their information and that boost from somebody, from 600 other people who have never stepped foot in a college classroom and have no idea how this whole thing works. And again, as Kyle mentioned, what's happening in high school is that the teachers, they are dependent on the teachers for their learning. It's the teacher's job. Teachers are paid and evaluated to make sure that their kids get from 4th grade to 5th grade to 9th grade to 10th grade. Totally different thing in college, right? Especially with well, I'm just going to keep that to myself. Anyway, but again, so what we're looking at is students being very dependent. We call them dependent learners in high school, and what we're trying to help them do with that transition is move them into becoming more independent learners. Okay, so how do we address some of the discrepancies that we see in students students. And so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to walk you through a couple of exercises that hopefully you find interesting. The first one is regarding memorization. Because our students, we find, freshmen especially, they are phenomenal memorizers. They can memorize everything that you could ever possibly give them. Why? They memorize it just long enough to
Pass the quiz.
pass the quiz, pass the test, spit it out, and never go back to it. Again, like Kyle says, teachers have taught them what to memorize, what to study. They're not really surprised when they get their test to say, oh, you know, this is pretty much what we talked about the last 4 days in a row, the last 3 days in a row, the last 2 days in a row. So we're going to do a quick memorization activity, and then we're going to move to what we call completing the calendar, something that we do in study skills. So the first thing that we're going to do is an exercise called Flingeldobe and Privet, and Kyle is going to take us through this.
So, as Don was kind of saying, this is for students coming into college for the first time. You know, their high school experiences informing everything they do, how they learn, how they approach material. Memorization is the go-to strategy because high school students are good at it. They've had tons of practice at it. But what we're going to try to see here is what are the limits of memorization? Where does memorization need to stop, and where do you need to start thinking about information in a new way? So here you can kind of imagine, you know, a mom checking up on a student and saying, you know, how's everything going? And the student kind of saying, don't worry, I've got everything memorized. I'm totally ready for the first exam. I got this. So what we're going to do is we're going to read a little story together called Flingeldobe and Privet. We're going to read it aloud together, and then we're going to take a little quiz on it. Don't worry about it. It'll be an open book quiz, and you can even talk amongst each other and kind of figure out answers. So it should be a piece of cake, right? So first, let's kind of go through the story, starting with the title on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Flingeldobe and Privet. Last Cerny, Flingeldobe and Privet were in the birdlink, treppering gloopy caples and cleaving burly greps. Suddenly, a ditty strezzle boofed into Flingeldobe's tress. Privet glaped and glaped. Oh, Flingeldobe, he chifed, that ditty strezzle is tunning in your grep.
Those ditty strezzles, right?
I love those two. They're cute.
They're just... So, you read the story, you reviewed the material, now it's time for the exam. You're a little nervous, but I think we got this. Like I said, this is an open book exam, so what we're going to start with...
Yell out answers. You don't even have to raise your hand. Yell it out.
Right, just
you get it right.
Yell out the answers.
You get it right.
And it's also a group exam,
Yeah,
so any
yeah.
points that you guys score, they go to the group. So added incentive, right? So first question, some short answer questions. For 10 points, when were Flingeldobe and Privet in the birdlink?
Last Cerny.
That's so good. 10 points in your pocket right there, right? So all of a sudden you're at this test, you're kind of looking at the material, you're going, I see something I recognize. Last Cerny, I memorized that. I got this. Maybe this isn't so hard. Maybe I can do this. So the second question, a little bit more difficult. Don't worry about it. We've got each other. We've got the material here. For 15 points, what moved into Flingeldobe's tress? A ditty strezzle, right? So the second, and it was even a harder question. It was worth more points, but you guys got it right. So you're feeling a little bit better. You're building confidence. You're going, this isn't so hard. I think I know this stuff. I think I got this material down. Another 15 pointer, right? What kind of cables were Flingeldobe and Privet treppering? Gloopy. Another 15 pointer. You guys are up to 40 points on a 100-point test, so you're feeling pretty good. You're almost halfway there. But at the end of each one of these tests is the dreaded essay question. Right? So here's your essay question.
60 points.
60 points to make up. So this is the biggest part of the test. Based on the events in Flingeldobe and Privet, do you think Flingeldobe and Privet will want to visit the birdlink again? Why or why not? Use support from the text to support your answers. So here, you can right, you're looking at this and you're like, well, I don't know. But what students do here is the long perfected craft of the essay, right?
Yeah.
You kind of string together, you try and pick out words that look good together. And a lot of the work that Karen, our director, and Dawn do with the philosophy teams, they go, oh my gosh, we see this all the time. That you pick out certain, maybe I'll pick gloopy, that seems important, and a ditty strezzle, that seems really important because something happened with that. And you kind of string those things together in the essay, but you're not looking at the concepts, and you don't know how the concepts work in juxtaposition to each other. So here we're kind of seeing, look, memorization can get you certain things, it can get you certain answers, but when it comes to kind of more synthetic thinking, drawing those concepts together and seeing how they're related,